Welcome back to The Line. As the burning of Zozobra indicated last Friday, it is fiesta time in Santa Fe. The Entrada de Don Diego de Vargas, a costumed reenactment of the return of Spanish colonists to northern New Mexico, will have taken place by the time you watch this episode right now of New Mexico in Focus. Critics say it whitewashes the mistreatment of Native Americans. Supporters call it a celebration of two cultures agreeing to peacefully live together. Now, planned protests feel especially significant this year as the country grapples over what to do with memorials to historical figures that represent racial division and are seen by many as monuments to genocide and slavery. Julianne, this one in Santa Fe is interesting. The protests cranked up last year and the year before, and again, it's already happened this afternoon as we're airing this tonight on Friday night. But something seems in the air this year. Something's not quite the same as opposed to last year. What's amped it up particularly this year?
Well, I think last year was the real ramp up. And you had people in local government, like the mayor of the city of Santa Fe, recognizing that there was a swell of people who are uncomfortable with fiestas, to use a mild word, that are offended by and that find it very hurtful. And so you have a lot of people making promises last fall. Well, we're going to figure this out. We're going to have a symposium. We're going to really bring the community together, make the Entrada more, socially responsible, and then really that didn't happen.
That's right.
There was a day-long event in the Museum of New Mexico on Wednesday, where they showed a film that is really critical of this narrative. There were also discussions by people who are fierce defenders of this tradition. So I think there has been now approaching fiestas this year a little bit more attention. Like, we need to deal with this because it's not going to go away. I can remember 4 or 5 years ago that it was routine for the Cross of the Martyrs in Santa Fe to get defaced or to get repainted or to get decorated around fiesta time. That is a big Christian Catholic monument. It's a big white cross that really stands over the city. You've seen that thing get painted red before as a nod to a different way to tell the story. So I think this year, as you said, it's already happened by the time people are watching this, but there are definitely going to be a lot of people on the plaza. There's definitely going to be tension there.
Right.
I hope that our city does not experience violent eruptions as part of this. And certainly the organizers that are, particularly from the group Red Nation, that are asking people to come and show up at the plaza, there's a serious undercurrent that this is not to escalate into violence, that causing violence as a way to respond to violence is not really going to solve anything. So we'll see if that bears out.
That's right. No small amount of irony here from what Julianne just mentioned, Serge, that the idea of a peaceful reconquest or a peaceful reentry and finding some middle ground on this, whether that's an acceptable way of explaining this or not. That seems, again, I'm out of the loop here since I live in Albuquerque. That's a tough conversation, would seem to me. How do you find middle ground on something like that?
It's absolutely a tough conversation, and I also am not from Santa Fe and here in Albuquerque, but obviously this is connected to a much larger national conversation that we're having about tradition and what it means and the symbolism, what it means to one group of people and what it means to another, and how we can respect each other without perpetuating historical injustices that are extremely severe in many, many cases.
Right.
So it is a challenging discussion. It will be. There is no simple fix, obviously. Violence is something that we all hope will be avoided. I think it's not going to happen quickly. But I'm delighted that we're having this conversation, right? And as I watch stuff happening in the South, I was a little bit curious as to how this might make its way to New Mexico, and now I've seen how it's happening here, and I'm glad that we're having this conversation here in our state.
That's right, good point there. Lana, the idea that the city ponies up a pretty good amount of money, 5 figures, $50,000, no small amount of money, but this idea that supporters of the event say it is a religious celebration. And we clearly have laws in the books that say municipalities cannot contribute to religious celebrations, the separation of church and state there. I'm always curious year after year how this sort of works. Is it sort of a hands-off deal, but if somebody wanted to make a legal issue of this, would they have a good chance here, in your view?
Yeah, I think so. I
Yeah.
think there's real questions. I didn't realize until I read in the paper during this episode that the city gave $50,000 to support this celebration. And, you know, given the complexity of the population in Santa Fe, I mean, that's just surprising in and of itself. So the mayor has actually he set up a task force to think about this issue, to try to ease tensions. But it remains to be seen, you know, whether what happens tomorrow in Santa Fe will be the same or different than what we've seen elsewhere, whether Antifa or other groups show up unexpectedly.
You never know. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Laura, the idea that groups come and celebrate this in classrooms around the city, places of work, it's so embedded into the community of Santa Fe. I have trouble picturing this unwinding. Do you know what I mean? In some way as well. It's one thing to have an issue with it. It's another thing to have all the volunteers, all the people that do support this take a huge step back and say, you know, this is not as worthy to us as people, you know, want to make it. How would you see that happening if folks really wanted to sort of unwind this thing? That'd be a huge difficulty with
I find the whole spectacle bizarre, personally, because, I mean, for me, I grew up in Deming. We didn't have, I mean, you know, I'm a big supporter of any kind of local carnival, local feast days, whatever you're going to do to promote your local community and get people from the outside to come in. You know, in Deming, we have the duck races. We have a duck court, a duck queen.
Love it. Love it.
We have, it's a little hokey, but it's our cherry blossom festival,
innocent,
whatever it is.
though, you know,
It's
right.
fairly innocent. No, it's not celebrating genocide. Okay, and I think what strikes me as very strange is that there's such an indoctrination that goes along with this that happens at a very young age with students. I mean, the fact that these courts come to the schools and do this pageantry of sorts, and it's obviously elevated to a whole different level than, you know, your typical cherry blossom festival or duck races would be. So I find that just the spectacle of it very bizarre. I think when you really look at the history behind it, it's incredibly, you know, it's revisionist history.
Right. Right.
And it's something that what's interesting is, you know, I had a friend of mine who grew up in northern New Mexico and would tell me about how from a very young age they were taught that, you know, mijo, you're Spanish. You have a right to this area. Like you're better than the white person. This is, you know, this is your land. And that's an indoctrination that happens over generations. And I think it's very difficult for people who have been part of that to let go of it or to really recognize from the outside looking in that it's offensive to other people.
Right.
And to me, I mean, I see this as akin to the statues, the monuments that have come down around the country. And this is an actual visual representation of it. It's a dramatic reenactment. And in that sense, it's even worse in some ways to me. So I can completely understand people who find it offensive and want to take their kids out of school when it happens. I mean, it's just something
And they
that's
can
distasteful.
now. The education secretary.
Sure, and I think that's an
allowed that,
important thing to do. Well, the Santa Fe superintendent
That's
has,
right. Sorry, my fault again.
who used to be the
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Veronica Garcia. And so I think that's an important step to take and a recognition. And I think the next mayor, given that we're now talking about, you know, who's going to run for mayor of Santa Fe, is going to need to take this issue on and figure out how to come up with a compromise.
Good point there.
And that will be really interesting because one of the candidates, in fact, the only person who's officially declared to be a candidate for Santa Fe mayor, served as Don Diego de Vargas. And I think that Ronald Trujillo has some progressive ideas about how to view this, but I don't think that you can predict that he will go very far to try to really dismantle this. And there, you know, so if he's the presumptive victor at this point,
Right.
I think that's an interesting.
Good luck to
thing
that
could
person that
happen.
tries to take that on solo to unwind this. I'm telling you. Thank you all. Good stuff on a Friday night.